Hi everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel. Today we have a very nice guest, Brett Lips, the CEO of Atlas Network and also the editor of the book Finding New Ideas in Old Ones. And we translated this book and published in Turkish, Eski Fikirler İçinde Yenilerini Bulmak. So we are so happy today that we published our new book from our publishing house, D84. So we are going to talk about this book today with Brett. I have some questions for him, and then maybe we can talk about also the American politics and the situation in the United States right now. So welcome, Brett, again to Turkey and our YouTube channel.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. So we published this book in Turkish. One of our aim is to introduce Leonard Licu into Turkish society, because in Turkey he is not very widely known, and I think he is a name who is worth knowing, because of his legacy and work. But I want to start with the book. This is an edited book. How did you publish this book? How did you decide to publish this book? What's the idea behind it?
Yeah, well, the book was sort of a labor of love, and it was done opportunistically because we had finished up 10 years of holding annual lectures as part of Atlas Network's largest annual event. Lectures that were given by people who had known Leonard, who had been inspired by Leonard. And when we look back at the diversity of the lectures that were given, it really was a great reflection of the breadth of Leonard's intellectual influence. And it seemed like it would be a big missed opportunity if we didn't find a way to package that together. And as you said, to hopefully introduce Leonard's legacy and Leonard's virtues to new audiences that really should be inspired by them, because he was a special person.
So you make these conferences annually to honor his name, Leonard Licu Conference Series. So every year a scholar from a liberty movement come and give a speech, and you turn them into articles in this book, and there are 10 articles in the book. So I think all these articles are kind of a contribution to the liberal theory in their respective disciplines, from law to political science, from philosophy to political thought history. So how can you evaluate these articles? Do you think that these articles can helpful to liberty movement in which ways?
Yeah, well, I thought that the book in some ways could carry on Leonard's tradition of sparking interest in minds that have become interested in liberty, to sort of open up new avenues for exploration. What I think was remarkable about the career of Leonard Licu is that he operated behind the scenes. He really saw that his influence was manifested in the work of others. He published a lot of scholarly articles during his years and gave a lot of lectures and talks, but he never took the time to compile his own book. He never published a book under his own name. So there's a reason why he's not well known in Turkey, and in many ways he's not well known as a public figure in the United States, where he spent his life. But among those who have been involved in what we call the freedom movement, the community of organizations and scholars that are working to advance a better understanding of liberal ideas and to put those into practice where possible, Leonard was a hero to many, really because he was so well studied that he always could point you in a new direction for research. And what you see in the lectures that we've collected are people that are real students of history, who have done the hard work of understanding centuries upon centuries of whether it's monetary theory or regulatory policy, and they have been able to unearth from those old ideas some new insights that they can bring to audiences. And the big hope that I know I have in having edited this, and I think I can channel Leonard and say his big hope would have been that there's new generations of people who can contribute to the advance of liberal ideas, who will be inspired to show the same kind of curiosity and love of the truth that we see in the lectures that were given.
Mm-hmm. I also want to talk about the name of the book, Finding New Ideas in Old Ones. So it's a phrase from Leonard Liggio, kind of Liggiesk kind of phrase, I guess. Why did you name this book as Finding New Ideas in Old Ones?
The title comes from an anecdote that was shared at the beginning of the lecture that John Tomasi gave. And Professor Tomasi is one of my favorite academics in the US who taught at Brown for a number of years and who now leads a really interesting organization called Heterodox Academy. And John said that when he was sort of newly fired up, he was a kid that was just going through seminars that were hosted by the Institute for Humane Studies, a really important organization that Leonard was president of in the 1980s. When John Tomasi went through those programs, he got fired up with this notion that, hey, he was with a lot of other young scholars that had big ambitions, and part of the impact of that seminar was for him to say, we're going to come up with like a bunch of new ideas to advance this cause. And the way that John would tell the story is that Leonard kind of nodded in his gentle way, but then kind of quietly suggested, John, sometimes the best new ideas are found in the old ones. And that's why we kind of paraphrase that for the title, because I think that there's a real humility that you find in Leonard's career, where he wanted to see bold thinking, but he thought that needed to be anchored in the humble desire to learn more, and that if kids go racing ahead without having studied the old ideas, they were bound to make new mistakes.
But I think it also reflects his interdisciplinary approach, because he thinks that a good economist should read history and a good historian also should read economy, and vice versa, and all of the other disciplines of social science, because he's a really good reader. We know that he reads one book each day. It's hard to believe, but he's a very hardworking academician. But he's not only a scholar, but also an activist. He has done a lot of stuff in the civil society, different liberal civil society organizations in the United States. So how can you define his activism? How can you explain his ways to fight for liberties?
Yeah, I guess that one of the things that I would say is maybe most important as a takeaway is that Leonard was really generous with his friendship, and he didn't have a lot of litmus tests about who he would speak to. Right now, I think we might get into this later, there's a lot of division in the United States. It used to be that conservatives and libertarians sort of formed a broader tent of classical liberal community. That's been splitting a little bit, but there was always a tension there. Leonard found productive ways to speak to all parts of that community. And in fact, he was a very close confidant of the economist Murray Rothbard. And in the 1960s, Murray and Leonard were very actively courting people in the New Left, the people who were anti-war and very vocal on that topic. They thought were sort of natural libertarians in a way. So when you look at Leonard's career, he was working with a lot of conservative folks that wound up in the Ronald Reagan administration. He had been with the hippies of the 1960s trying to find common ground with anti-establishment people from sort of progressive circles. And then he was in some ways just a beloved libertarian who was best friends with anarcho-capitalist Murray Rothbard. And in that, you can kind of see that Leonard didn't have time for some of the rivalries that can create friction. He thought there were ways to work productively with lots of different people who didn't necessarily see each other as allies, but they thought they were working for liberty. And Leonard was always excited to know them, to work in establishing institutions that could play a productive role. And to encourage them to do bigger thinking and deeper thinking about the cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I'm reading and translating the book, what I feel about Leonardo Liggio is that he creates networks. Mm-hmm. He makes people meet and create the atmosphere, create the, how to say, the ground for producing new ideas, new strategies for fighting for liberties. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a good way to do it in Turkey right now, because Turkey is experiencing a really authoritarian period. So I think it's also a way for Turkish civil society to gather around, to create new networks, to help each other, to make other people meet with each other and try to produce all together. In this way, I think this book also helps us to understand Liggio's legacy and his ways to struggle for democracy and liberty. So you are also the CEO of Atlas Network. I just want to talk about also the American politics nowadays because of Trump's administration. Turkish public also wonders about what's happening in the United States. So do you think that liberty movement now having some problems during the Trump era, and what are these problems?
Yeah, we're definitely having some problems and some challenges. I think that it's a really unsettled time because it's very much a mixed bag. For a long time, the threats to liberty seem to be coming from the institutionalized left, the socialists that wanted a much bigger role of the state in economic affairs, and the Democratic Party that had been in power for some time, with the brief interruption of Trump's first term, which was also kind of saddled with a lot of complications. The Democratic Party has been, I think, not a friend to civil liberties, and has had some authoritarian instincts itself in terms of trying to crack down on free speech and so on. So I think that there's some parts of the freedom movement coalition in the United States that has been very excited to see changes that the Trump administration has made. But at the same time, there's been sort of a recklessness and a disregard of the rule of law and some of these fundamental institutions that we think are important for free societies that used to be championed pretty consistently by people who called themselves conservatives, who are at the heart of the Republican Party, and that's very much changed. There's a vindictiveness within the Trump administration, which in some ways has been earned by their political enemies who did not treasure the rule of law either. But we're in a bad situation where you have a cycle of revenge that's happening within our political elites, and it doesn't seem to be landing in a great place.
Yeah. In such an atmosphere, it's difficult to defend liberties, unfortunately, between those Republicans and Democrats. I think we can also talk more about the articles, the 10 articles that you published in this book. Why did you, these are the first 10 speeches in Liggio conference series, but are these articles have any important characteristics? Why did you take them and put them into the book?
Yeah, I guess it's important to just clarify that each chapter in the book is a lecture that was given at this annual meeting that Atlas Network holds, and we bring together free market think tanks from more than 100 countries around the world that all want to learn from one another. And a lot of their focus and what we concentrate on at that conference is sort of the mechanics of the strategies for running organizations that exist to advance ideas. Sometimes we don't get an opportunity to go deep into the reason that we're there, because we love liberal ideas and we think they have the answers for a lot of the problems that vex our communities. So the Liggio lecture was established as an opportunity to spotlight an academic that Leonard had a great affection for. In many ways he'd nurtured through the years. And I loved how each person that we challenged to give a Liggio lecture came back with something very thoughtful that sometimes was anchored in a conversation he had with Leonard, but then they didn't linger too much on the relationship with Leonard. That wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part is always, you know, how the ideas manifest. And what I think is really noteworthy is that all of the lectures are quite different from one another. You know, there's one that goes through centuries of history of monetary policy, which was something that Leonard cared deeply about. You had Pete Boettke talking about the challenges within higher education, another thing that Leonard cared deeply about. And Gabriel Calzada talks about how we need to be more attentive as a liberal community to governments declaring emergency, sometimes for kind of specious, not serious reasons, and aggregating more power to themselves. Gabriel talks about, you know, through history what we can learn from emergency situations and how different governments had handled it. And one of my favorites is a piece by Lenore Skenazy, by Lenore Ely, who is a wonderful academic who studied with Leonard really about the role of civil society in passing along ideas and how it's not necessarily political battles we need to worry about, but it's about winning hearts and minds for ways to work out our problems in voluntary society, not always thinking everything comes down to a political dispute.
Okay. So Litgio has also some initiatives outside of United States. During the Cold War, for example, he started an initiative in Eastern Europe, in France, and he has relations also with South America. Can you please summarize about what Litgio did outside of the United States in international liberty community?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, what Atlas Network exists to do today, and we've sort of institutionalized the process to do this, is what Leonard was doing personally for many years before he got involved formally as a part of the Atlas Network team. Leonard was, I think, a co-founder of the Institute for Economic Studies in Europe that Jacques Garello ran these wonderful summer universities, and his son Pierre has carried on that tradition. Leonard, in many ways, was just helping to seed efforts by giving advice, by being willing to travel and give lectures, and by introducing people to others who can help one another. And this really connects to his early career. Leonard was a staff member for one of the first philanthropies, the Volcker Fund, which took an intentional effort at creating networks of liberal thinkers. It was Volcker Fund money that underwrote the first Mont Pelerin Society meeting back in 1947. And Leonard was one of those young scholars fresh out of college that was involved in trying to identify, who are the academics that are going to do the research, that are going to give the lectures, that inspire new minds to question the status quo. Because after World War II, a lot of the thinking was geared towards this idea that we need experts who can plan how society should work. And Leonard saw that as a huge danger, that usually it's the person himself who knows how to plan their affairs, and we don't need a lot of experts trying to micromanage what people should have the freedom and dignity to work out for themselves.
And he did not only work for Atlas Network, but also he worked in Mont Pelerin Society, Philadelphia Society, Institute for Humane Studies, which is very important in terms of training new academicians, new people in academia. So he also have dialogue with even leftist people, not only the liberty movement, different parts of liberty movement. So he can talk to anybody. So why is he that active and to reach all those people and different institutions and create this very big network?
Yeah. Well, in the foreword that was done for this book, my colleague Tom Palmer, who I has lectured here in Turkey a number of times. He made the remark that he always believed that Leonard had a 1,000-year plan for liberty, and some of us got to glimpse a piece of it, but never the whole thing. But that may be overstating it a little bit. But I think that key to Leonard's vast plan was that he knew that we can't be insular. We need to be looking about how we communicate to new audiences and how we find common ground with their values. And that's not to say we should be compromising principles, but we should be looking for ways to build on some good instincts. And you'll see good instincts among people of all political stripes. This is that they, in different ways, tend to find an area where they wonder why we're trying to have a central authority coordinate efforts that just don't need it. And Leonard could take that spark and to try to introduce people to this broader vision of how we can really be much more radical in our thinking about where government's necessary. There are some roles, but not, but they're few and should be enumerated, and that free people can work out voluntary solutions through the market, through civil society, to most topics that cause problems in society.
Yeah. So Leonard Liggio, I think, set an example for people who are defending liberties in all around the world. His legacy is something that we learn a lot as people who are trying to fight against anti-democratic implementations in all around the world, and especially in today's world, there's this populist authoritarian regime. They are getting ground in all around the world. So I think Liggio's legacy is important in that sense, and that's why we translated and published this book. That's one of our reasons. We published our new book from the D84 Publishing House. It's finding new ideas in old ones, but in Turkish it's Eski Fikirler İçinde Yenilerini Bulmak. Now you can order the book from internet online bookstores. It's available right now. So thank you, Brett, for joining us today and making this YouTube broadcast happen. And thank you for watching us.